Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode in my Unreal Engine 4 tutorial series. In this video, we're going to go over how widgets work, and in particular, how to toggle widgets off and on. For this, we'll be going over the basics of how widgets work and how we get them to display on the screen. Plus, we'll go into an ideal setup for what we call a window-based widget, a UI that opens up windows for various things such as character screen, equipment, inventory, skill tree, whatever it may be. So we're going to build a system to support that. So the first thing you want to do when you're in a new project is to create a new controller object. So you want to go to Add New, Blueprint Class, and Player Controller. And of course, my controller. So the controller object is, by default, you have one already assigned. Okay, it's just a generic player controller object. However, you can't access this and add stuff to it. It's the default controller. It's always a good idea to make your own custom controller, because then you can add stuff to it to customize a lot of the controls and how they work, especially when you're not controlling your player character, but instead controlling, say, something like the user interface. So with that done, we now need to assign our new custom controller to be the main one that is being used. So to do that, you need to go to your Edit, Project Settings, and in here you'll see Maps and Modes. Click on this, and you'll see a default game mode has been set to first person game mode in this particular template. And if you expand open the selected game mode options, you can choose which player controller class it is to use. So you change the drop down to your new My Controller. You can just close your project settings and that's set up like so. Okay, so just to emphasize that the My Controller is inherited from the default player controller, so it controls exactly the same as the regular one. So what we need to do now is set up a widget. Now the way the widget system works is that you add it to a viewport. Now the viewport automatically will stretch any widget across it. Okay, this is why it's a good idea to do a sort of canvas, a panel, which is going to be sort of the container which controls and contains all of your various widgets. And this is typically called the HUD widget, okay, the UI widget. So to do that, I'm going to go right click in here and go to User Interface and New Widget Blueprint. And I usually call mine Heads Up Display UI, but you can call yours whatever you like. But all this thing is the sort of overarching parent of all the widgets that are displayed on the screen. The main thing you need to do in here at the very start is to click on the canvas panel, and you want to take the is variable tick box over on the right hand side. This means it allows us to access this canvas panel outside of this widget. So I'm just going to name this one HUD Canvas. That way I can access it just by searching for that name. So I'm going to compile this and close this for now. Next, we need to add some widgets that we want to display. So I'm not going to go into massive detail about creating a widget. You've seen that in many of my other series, and I'll do other series down the road as well with more stuff about widgets and creating particular ones. So we're just going to do a basic box standard border widget, which will be a stand-in for whatever widget you're trying to add to your screen. So we're going to do this one as a window widget, we'll call it that. But this could be your character sheet, your inventory, skill tree, whatever it may be. And this is a sub widget because it's going to be added into another widget. So it's a sub class, a sub widget. And what we need to do in here is turn off the canvas panel. So I'm going to delete the canvas panel. And the reason why is because a canvas panel will automatically be well, not automatic, will give you absolute control of the positioning. We don't need that in this case. We don't need absolute positioning. We just need bulk standard relative positioning upon the parents. So in here, as I said, I'm going to do just a simple one. We're just going to do a size box. And we're going to do a border inside the size box. I'm going to click on my size box and I'm going to override the width and the height in the details panel. And the width is going to be, say, 800, and the height is going to be 1000. Actually, let's turn the width down to maybe 600. Now, at the moment, it doesn't change anything on this screen. That's because our preview is set to fill screen. Fill screen basically means it's going to fill up the whole entire screen and show you what it looks like when it is filled to the whole screen. Now, if you were to add this widget as it is raw to the viewport, this is how it would appear. However, we're going to do this as a sub widget. So to get an idea of what that would look like, you can change it from fill screen to desired. And now you've got a good accurate view of what this thing will look like. That's what I'm going to do for this. As say you would have all your junk in here for whatever widget you're trying to do. We're just going to go through how to toggle it off and on. So we'll hit compile and we're going to close that. So the next thing is we've got to add it to our heads-up display. Now a heads-up display, there's two ways about this. You can either add it to a heads-up display canvas right now in the editor and turn its visibility off and on, or you can add it each time to the view, add it to the canvas panel each time, therefore forcing it to update its stats and figures and so forth. I'm going to go through and show you how to do the visibility check. Okay. The reason why I'm going to show you the visibility one is because it makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker to position your widgets correctly as you can see them in the editor. And then you can tell them, we'll make a custom code to let it to update a various value or so forth. Okay. So what we're going to do in here is go into our heads up display. And we're going to add that widget we just made to our heads up display. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here and go user created. And I'm going to choose my window widget and drag it into my canvas. Now, when you add anything to a canvas, by default, it will be a little small box in the top left-hand corner. That's because it has been told it's certain size. Now, if we get selected, if you go to the right-hand side, you'll see a tick box saying size to content. This will set the auto size to true, meaning it will size it based on its contents, on its container. So our window widget was that size which we set up, and therefore it is added. Now, it added it to the top left because by default its anchor, which is this shape here, is set to the top left of the screen. But what if we want it onto the right hand side? Well, what we can do is first of all change the anchor. The anchor we want to choose in this case is this one here. And you see it disappear over this side. Now the anchor is what is used to measure the distance and positioning of your widget. Basically, it measures the distance between, the relative distance between the anchor and the widget and places it accordingly. That way, if you've got a screen with different sizes, it doesn't get clipped off the side of the screen or get too distant away from where it should be. So with that anchor now set, I can reposition it how I like. So I'm going to just reset it with the reset arrows here. And you can see it's still, it's going to the top left of the widget, but it's now to that anchor. This top left is the widget is the default setting for drawing a widget. It's 0, 0 coordinates in the alignment. If we want it to be dead center, we can change our alignment to 0.5 and 0.5, for example, like so. And that is now anchored to the center. But I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be to the right of it. So if I change the X to value to a 1 and leave Y to 0.5, this widget will now remain always in the middle of the whole entire screen and to the right of it. It's flushed with the right of it exactly. And that is it. If I want to offset it even more, I can change the position X and position Y how I see fit. So I can go to position X and do minus 100 to give it a 100 inset on the right there. Okay, I kind of like where that is, so I'm going to click compile, and I think I am done now. Now we've got to add our heads-up display to the screen. So we can do this in multiple places. You can do it on the game mode, you can do it on the controller, whatever you fancy really. In this case, we'll do it on the controller, as there's no harm in doing it there. The only reason why you wouldn't do it on the controller is if you are going to be changing controllers throughout the game. That's throughout the level at least anyway. So that's the only issue. If not, you can put it on the game mode, you can put it wherever you like really. So here I'm putting on the controller, and on begin play, this node here, we're going to take it to create widget, and we're going to choose the heads up display UI. We don't need to do the window one because that has already been added to our heads up display. Next we've got return value, and we're going to store that return value as a variable. The reason why you do that is because you want to, throughout the game, access this HUD to change properties on it, such as toggling on and off a widget. So in here, I'm going to call this one HUD UI. Let's rename that because that doesn't look too nice there. We'll quit heads up display. UI. There we go. And from there, we're going to tell it to add that to the viewport. And there you go. So add to viewport means it will render it to the screen. Hit compile, and then if you push play, you'll see the widget is now on the right hand side of the screen. So that's the widget there, but that's not what we want, is it? We want the widget to appear on the key press and disappear on the key press. So what we're going to do is first of all set up that key press. So I'm going to go into edit, project settings, and I'm going to go down to input. And on the input settings in the action mappings, I'm going to expand open and hit the plus button. This will add a new action mapping. Here I can name what I want the action to be called. So I'm going to call this one toggle, let's do inventory, for example. Okay. And this is going to be the tab key. Okay. I'm going to close that, and that's now done. Head back into your My Controller, and in here we're going to set up that key press. So in here we're going to do toggle inventory. This is going to be recorded in the controller. Now, if you wanted the toggle inventory to do something different in the particular character, you could put this input action on that as well, but you'd have to turn off consume input. Okay, consume input means that this thing is on a, imagine like actors on like layers, and this is one of the top layers. It's not the top, but it's one of the top ones. And consume input means that when it receives an input, it'll hit this layer, the controller layer, and consume input means it will stop the input from traveling further down the layers. If you turn that off, it'll continue going on to the next one, and then triggering what it should do there too. So here I've got toggle inventory, and for this to work, we need to set up a function on a heads-up display to toggle our inventory window off and on. So I'm going to hit compile and go into my heads-up display. In here, we're going to go to the graph, and in the graph, we need to set up a function. The function is going to be called toggle inventory. And the toggle inventory is going to do two things. It's going to either show it or hide it. Pretty simple, right? Now, to do the testing whether you need to hide it or show it, we can do it with the window widget UI here as the variable. We can drag this out and choose get, and we can say get visibility. Well, actually, let's do is visible. There we go. That's a bit easier. And we can plug that into a branch. And now we have our two paths. It will either go true and turn it off, or go false and turn it back on. So let's do it for turning it on. So if it's false, to turn it on, we need to tell our window widget to turn its visibility on. So get window widget UI, set visibility to visible. Once we've made it visible, we then want to be able to do two things. First of all, we have to change its input mode. Then we have to tell it to show mouse cursor. And finally, the third thing is we have to also disable the input on the player character itself as well. So let's do those three things. So I'm going to get the player controller. So we'll be needing it. And then from there, we're going to set the input mode to game and UI. Now you need it as game and UI, not UI. It's because you still need to be able to access the player controller to turn things off and on. Okay, but we're going to disable input on the player character so you can't move. So the controller is sort of detethered from the player character, so to speak. So set input mode to game and UI. And then we're going to go set show mouse cursor and turn it to be true. And then finally, we're going to disable input on the player character. So get player character and disable input. This will require the player controller as well. So you can either drag from the same one, or you can add another one underneath it. I'm just going to put a reroute node in here and compile. So this will now turn it on if it is invisible. So let's make it invisible to begin with. So back to the designer view, click on your window widget UI, scroll down to where you find visibility, and change it to hidden. With that done, we now need to call that function from my controller. So go over to my controller and go to your toggle inventory input action. And when pressed, we want to call our heads up display variable, which we saved earlier. And we're going to do toggle inventory. Hit compile. Let's test that out. And if we push tab, there it goes. Now it won't disappear yet. So to make it disappear, we just do basically the opposite of what we just did. So go back to your heads up display, into the graph, and everything that's down here, you're going to do the opposite up here. So let's start off with the, let's just grab it all and just swap them out as we go. So set visibility, we're going to change that to hidden. Set game mode and set input mode to game and UI. You could leave this as is because you're still using the game. So it's totally down to you if you want to change it to game or not. I might as well change it to game just to show you the what your various options you could have, but you could leave it as a game and input UI only. So game and UI input mode. You wish. Finally got that out. Okay, then you plug that into the set show mouse cursor, turn that off, and rather than disable input, you want to enable input. And the target for that is the player character. And you're going to plug that in like so. Hit compile, and let's test that out. So I hit tab, there it appears, hit tab again, it disappears. And I can't move whilst I've got it open. If I hit tab, I can move again. Okay? And that's how you do a toggleable inventory. At least the first part of it. Because let's do a small test here. If I go into my window widget, and let's add some text to this. Let's change the color of it so we can actually see it. And in here, we're going to change the text to show a value. So for testing purposes, let's test value, we call it, and tick its variable. We're going to my graph, and on the construct, I'm going to tell this test value by choosing get and set text. I'm going to set it to equal the current time, for example. So I'm going to search for get time, and we're going to get real-time seconds. And this gives you the amount of time that's passed in seconds since the start of the game. So I'm just going to plug that straight into in-text there, hit compile. Now when I push play and tab, it'll say 0. That's because this thing was created right at the start, even though a couple of seconds have gone past. If you turn it off and on, you see it remains at 0. So this I'm going to show you now is how to update the values inside your widget when you toggle them off and on using the visibility method. If you're not doing visibility and just adding them to the screen again and again, you don't have to worry about this because they're being reconstructed rather than being made visible. So to update that value, what we're going to do is going to heads up display, and we need to add something to our enable our toggle here to tell it to update that information. So for that, we're going to go into window widget UI, and as well as event construct going into that, we also want to make a custom event called update, and you can call this, I don't know, I'm going to call mine update time, and plug that into the same node. And you'll do this for each thing you want to update. You could update the whole entire lot if you want, as long as it's on the construct, that'd be fine. So now I'll go back to heads up display, drag out your window widget UI, just get, and tell it to update time, or whatever you've called your function. Hit compile, and now test this out. And there you see it will change and update itself every time. And that's it. And that's all we're going to show you today. So let's go through what we just went through. We went through how to make a HUD panel, which will contain sub-widgets, how to create sub-widgets, and then how to make them toggle off and on via the use of a player controller. We then went through and showed you how to update values as you toggle them off and on. And that'll do it for this episode. If you've enjoyed this video, found it useful, Don't forget, I have a patreon.com/RyanLaley where you can subscribe and donate $1 a month to get access to all new videos every single week, and as well as exclusive benefits such as Discord access, exclusive videos, and much more. Big thank you to all my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you to all of you for supporting me, and wouldn't be doing this without you guys. So thanks very much. And that'll do it for me. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.